General Hospital will reveal Michael returned to Port Charles in a fury unlike anything he had ever known, carrying a shattered heart after losing both his father and mother in one horrifying night. He couldn't believe that Sonny had gone to Los Angeles for a simple heart surgery, with Carly accompanying him to care for him, only for them both to end up murdered by a heartless killer. The moment his flight from Germany landed, Michael didn't wait for anyone to pick him up, nor did he speak to anyone. He silently moved through the hurried crowds at the airport, his eyes blank and fixed ahead, as if part of his soul had been trapped forever in a nightmare that had just become reality. The devastating news came in the middle of the night, an urgent call from Jason. Though Jason barely managed to speak through his grief, Michael understood everything. His parents were dead, and his world had just been torn apart. On the ride back, the familiar streets of Port Charles blurred past the car windows, but Michael paid them no attention. His mind was overwhelmed with scattered memories, moments from childhood when Sonny would hold him, and times Carly, even in anger, would still defend her son at all costs. Now, all of it belonged to the past, leaving behind an emptiness that nothing could fill. Michael didn't cry. There was no space left for tears. What remained was raw, primal rage, burning and consuming. He made a silent vow right there in the back seat of that cold car: whoever was responsible for his parents' deaths would die. As soon as he arrived at the hospital where it all happened, Michael, dressed in a black funeral suit, didn't speak to the medical staff, nor did he request an explanation. He simply demanded access to all surveillance footage from that night. His chilling composure unsettled even Jason and Anna. Michael was no longer the sheltered son. He was now the embodiment of cold, calculated vengeance, determined and unstoppable. Watching the footage, Michael saw the moment a strange woman in surgical scrubs entered Sonny's room. It was Colette, posing as a medical worker, carrying a syringe filled with a deadly substance meant to finish Sonny off. Carly had realized something was wrong and rushed in to stop her, leading to a violent struggle. Amid the chaos, both Sonny and Carly were injected with the lethal drug. Death came swiftly and mercilessly. Each frame of the footage pierced through Michael like a blade. There was no doubt. This wasn't an accident. It was a targeted assassination. And from that moment forward, Michael had only one mission: to hunt down whoever was behind it and bury them. No matter the cost. The funeral of Sonny and Carly was a somber and heavy ritual, marked by a level of grief and silence that Port Charles had never witnessed before. Under a gray sky, with cold winds cutting through the air like blades, the sorrow weighed heavily, not only in the atmosphere but in the hearts of everyone present. Security forces were stationed tightly around the service area, a precaution necessary in light of the brutal assassination of two of the city's most prominent figures, murdered in what was supposed to be the safety of a top hospital. Rows of black chairs filled with people sitting in silence, family, friends, business associates, allies, and even past enemies. Despite their differences, no one could deny the influence Sonny and Carly held. Together, they were a cornerstone of Port Charles, representing power, loyalty, and conflict in equal measure. Now, their absence was a void, one that made the entire city feel shaken, vulnerable, and exposed. No one dared to break the oppressive silence until Michael stepped forward to speak. He didn't look at any paper, didn't read from a speech. His face was expressionless, his body rigid like carved stone, and his eyes devoid of emotion. He stood motionless against the cold wind, and when he finally spoke, his voice was low but resolute, slicing through the suffocating quiet like a blade: "Whoever killed my parents will have no place to hide." No flowery words. No emotional tribute. No nostalgic recollection. Just a single, cold vow, and it was more powerful than any eulogy could have been. It sent a chill down the spines of everyone present, for they knew this was not mere grief speaking. It was a declaration of vengeance. The deaths of Sonny and Carly did not just mark the end of a legacy, they triggered the beginning of a new, blood-soaked chapter in Port Charles, with Michael at the center like a storm quietly taking shape. No one knew exactly what he would do next, but everyone understood one thing: he would not stop until justice, or retribution, was served. Meanwhile, the details of that horrifying night began to emerge piece by piece. Sonny's heart surgery was supposed to be low risk, meticulously planned with state-of-the-art equipment and an experienced medical team. Every aspect had been prepared. Carly stayed by his side the entire time, not just out of love but from an instinctive sense of protection developed over a lifetime of surviving danger. But just when everything seemed secure, death slipped in through an unexpected crack. A woman dressed as a nurse, carrying a medical tray and paperwork that passed all checks, was granted access to the operating area. No one suspected a thing. But she was Colette, a ruthless contract killer with a long history of silent assassinations across the country. Her target this time was Sonny. She had been tracking Sonny for some time, learning the schedule, identifying security gaps. When her moment arrived, all she needed was a single syringe, and a moment of distraction. Carly, sensing something was wrong, rushed into the room just in time to confront her. A violent struggle broke out, but it was all over in seconds. Carly was stabbed. Sonny was injected. Death arrived swiftly and without mercy. By the time medical staff burst into the room, it was already too late. Two of Port Charles's most powerful figures, once thought to be untouchable, lay lifeless in a room that was meant to save lives. And from that moment, the story stopped being about sorrow. It became a mission. And Michael was the one to ring the first bell of war. When Carly noticed the irregularity in Colette's movements, her instincts screamed louder than any logic. Something was wrong. Without hesitation, she stormed into the operating room, pushing past the stunned medical staff. She didn't need confirmation. The unease twisting in her gut was sharper than any evidence. This woman didn't belong here. Colette, realizing her cover was blown, swiftly reached for the syringe she had expertly concealed in the medical tray, a small but deadly weapon filled with a lethal toxin, capable of ending a life within seconds. Carly shouted for everyone to stay back and lunged at her. A violent struggle broke out beneath the cold, surgical lights. Carly grabbed Colette's wrist, desperately trying to stop the fatal injection. They wrestled fiercely, a blur of white coats and flailing limbs, until a split-second misstep sealed Carly's fate. In the chaos, the needle pierced her own skin. She let out a sharp cry, her body jolted violently, and then crumpled to the floor at the foot of Sonny's hospital bed, lifeless within moments. Sonny, still semi-conscious from preoperative sedation, stirred as if sensing the horror unfolding around him. His eyes fluttered open, only to witness Carly's body lying still beneath him. Panic and devastation surged through him, overriding the weakness in his limbs. He tried to move, to reach her, but his body failed him, sapped of strength and helpless. Before anyone could intervene, Colette approached once more. In one final, chilling act, she plunged the needle into Sonny's wrist. The deadly dose took effect almost instantly. His body stiffened, his breath caught, and then stopped altogether. The room, once filled with the soft hum of machines and whispered clinical instructions, was now drowned in silence, blood, and death. By the time hospital security stormed in, Colette had already vanished like a ghost, leaving behind a room steeped in cold, sterile horror. Carly, once fierce and unyielding, lay dead with her eyes wide open. And Sonny, once the untouchable kingpin of Port Charles, had drawn his last breath without a word, without a goodbye. News of the double homicide spread through Port Charles like a tidal wave, swallowing the city in grief and disbelief. Emergency bulletins, breaking news reports, and shocked whispers filled every corner. Headlines screamed, Sonny Corinthos and Carly murdered during routine surgery, city in mourning. Businesses affiliated with the Corinthos family were put on indefinite hold. Allies and enemies alike stood stunned. Jason, Sonny's most loyal enforcer and brother-in-arms, was nearly crushed under the weight of the loss. Standing over their bodies, his eyes were red, his hands clenched, his soul fractured. There were no tears, just the silence of someone who had lost a part of himself that could never be replaced. But for Michael, the grief mutated into something else, something darker. He didn't mourn with tears. He mourned with purpose. Hours after the funeral, Michael was already back in his office, reviewing hospital footage, replaying every moment, zooming in on Colette's face, analyzing her every movement. He combed through hospital staff rosters, security logs, erased internal emails, access badge records, every trace, every anomaly. He reached out to sources beyond normal reach. A nurse who had seen Colette near the restroom, a guard who remembered her swiping a badge without showing her face, a clerk who noticed a suspicious QR code activated minutes before the attack. Piece by piece, Michael reconstructed the puzzle. And the picture that formed wasn't just about Colette, it pointed to something more sinister. Colette was the blade. But someone else had wielded it. And Michael understood, that was the hand he needed to sever. No matter how deep he had to go. No matter the cost. Port Charles had never seen a Michael like this before. The young man once known for his loyalty, decency, and quiet restraint had vanished, buried alongside the graves of Sonny and Carly. What remained was something unrecognizable, cold, calculating, and unrelenting. There was no trace left of the grieving son who once sought comfort in words or healing in memories. In his place now stood a force shaped by grief and forged in fury, razor-sharp, unyielding, and dangerous. Michael was no longer a man moved by emotion, he had become a tactician. There were no impulsive outbursts, no cries for justice, no pleas for answers. Everything he did was deliberate. Every step was measured. He knew the rules of power, he had learned them from Sonny, and now he was rewriting them in his own name. He became a ghost in his own city, always moving, never still, watching from the shadows, gathering names, tracing movements, compiling a list. He didn't trust the law. He didn't seek revenge for show. He sought it as a purpose, as destiny. Those responsible for sending Colette, the faceless puppeteers who believed they could strike down giants and disappear into the dark, had underestimated what Sonny and Carly left behind. Michael wasn't just their son. He was their legacy, armed with everything they taught him, Sonny's ruthlessness, Carly's instincts, and his own sharpened intellect. And with those tools, he had one mission. Expose the network that orchestrated the killings and burn it to the ground. It didn't matter who they were. Business tycoons, political figures, underworld bosses, it was all the same. Power didn't intimidate him anymore. In fact, it fueled him. Because what could they take from him now? His parents were already in the ground. He spent sleepless nights poring over financial trails, offshore accounts, medical supply shipments, and encrypted communications, each breadcrumb leading closer to the ones who had hidden behind Colette's hand. And as he peeled away the layers, he found a deeper, more sinister truth: Colette wasn't working alone. She was just a pawn in a multi-tiered game designed to destabilize the Corinthos empire from within. But what they didn't expect was that in destroying Sonny, they had created something far more dangerous, an heir with nothing to lose and no one left to fear. While the skies above Port Charles remained heavy with storm clouds and morning bells echoed through narrow streets, the first thunderclaps of vengeance had already begun to rumble beneath the surface. The city was still dressing its wounds, still whispering memories of Sonny's name and clinging to images of Carly's strength, but in the alleyways, in the boardrooms, and behind locked doors, people began to feel the shift. The hunted were becoming the hunted. Michael's rage didn't shout. It didn't burn wildly. It moved like a storm on the horizon, slow, methodical, and unstoppable. He didn't make threats. He made plans. And everyone in Port Charles knew, a reckoning was coming. It wasn't a matter of if. It was a matter of when. Blood had been spilled. Graves had been dug. And Michael would not stop until every drop had been avenged. Because in his heart were not just memories, but two fresh graves, still warm with love, still cold with betrayal. And for him, there would be no peace. Not until every last person responsible had paid. In full.